Hello, this is Cece with Going Solo. You are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, and we are so pleased to have with us today Bill Mitchell. Bill Mitchell is a domestic and dating violence speaker. He's come about this through a tragedy in his life, and we do offer our condolence to your family. His daughter was killed in 2005 of domestic violence, dating domestic violence. And so we wanted to bring that into the forefront to be able to expose what is happening in our today's society so that we can be more aware as we're out there in the dating field. So welcome, Bill, to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I appreciate this.
Well, thank you so much. Can you share with us a little bit about your journey, as you've gone through this, tragic time?
Well, Cece, you're absolutely right that it began in June 2005. My daughter had graduated in May 2005, and 20 days later, we received a call from detectives telling us that they needed to meet with us and they needed to tell us what happened. And that was that she had been murdered by her ex-boyfriend. So we didn't know very much about domestic violence or dating violence or intimate partner violence, any of that. But we got a strong education in that first 24 hours about it. And since that time, we had to go through all the obvious things, which of course somebody in your family passes away, they have to be buried, you have to take care of all that. But in our case too, of course, it was a murder situation. So we came very close to going into court when our guy actually stepped up and wanted to plead guilty and do time in prison, which made it a lot easier for us. That was really all parts of the first year. From that point on, from 2006 to now, it's from our standpoint, figuring out ways to pick up the pieces, make the most out of a tragedy. And that has been a lot of good things. A foundation was begun in 2007. At this point, I've done close to 70 speeches about dating violence, all kinds of places, at colleges, high schools, police academies, private companies. And I really love to do it because I can, in 1 hour, take people from not knowing very much about it to knowing pretty much all they need to know at that point to look for the signs, to help their friends. And I know we're going to talk about that, so I don't want to take up the whole beginning here. But I feel like we've made a lot out of it. We've helped a lot of people. So.
Yeah. Domestic violence is becoming a lot more known and people are becoming more aware of it. Back in the day when women didn't talk about it, men didn't talk about it, and now it's becoming more prevalent. People are sharing their experiences. It's getting out a little bit more and more. I'm seeing it more with our divorce support group, the domestic violence within their relationship. Also, some experience it as they're traveling through that transition of divorce. Because there's that hold, there's a bit of stalking sometimes, there's a great deal of intimidation, a lot of different things happen, as they're traveling through divorce. But, we wanted to focus a little bit today on about dating because, all of us that are going through divorce, we hope, and I hope that, and pray that they will be whole enough to feel like they can go out and start having relationships again and be able to develop those. So as they're traveling through dating, is there any, like what you were mentioning, is there any particular signs or things like that you could maybe share with us that would make us more aware of what people are going through?
Well, yes, and I think that what can happen in a relationship is that some of the things that you feel in dating someone that could be very positive are things that if you knew a little bit more about it, you might say, it seems positive, but what's going on might be a little over the top, might be too much. So it's tough. But if there were such a thing as a template, let's just say for a moment, for a relationship that starts out well and goes bad, goes unhealthy, it goes like this, and it's in about 6 steps. The very first part of what you might want to call a fairytale romance. So that's great. You go out with somebody, you have a wonderful time. The person seems like they've thought through what they wanted to do or where to take you, where to eat, and you see a movie, go do something interesting, and you think, wow, I just met the greatest person. And that might go on for a while. The next part, though, that sometimes you just don't see kind of creeping and crawling over you is isolation. So little by little, that other person makes it inconvenient, let's say, for you to be with your other friends maybe at times, or not, or to be with your family. They might come up with something so that instead of you going to someone's birthday party in your family, that this person bought tickets to see some show that you've been dying to see, and it happens to be on the same date. It's not by accident that that happened. It's that that person wants you all to him or herself. So that's the isolation part, and it happens, in truly all cases. And then it starts into an area which are threats of violence. Threats of violence can be just somebody who all of a sudden starts sharply yelling at you, or somebody who slams a door, or someone says, I ought to slap you when you say things like that. Little by little, though, it just keeps happening. It gets worse. The next phase then is actual violence. Now, in my daughter's case, I don't think there was actual violence until the last thing that this guy did. But still, yelling at somebody really harshly, shaking them, things like that, that's violence. Of course, then obvious violence could be slapping or choking or pushing or kicking or those types of things. And that's true domestic violence. The next part is, once the dust settles a little bit, a convincing apology. So it could be, look, you know what I've been going on what's been going on at work lately. I should have gotten that raise. Someone else got it instead of me. Or in the high school case, it might be a guy, let's just say, who said, I spent all summer getting in shape and I didn't make the team. And he picked the same guys who were on the team last year and they had a losing season. I can't believe it. So I'm sorry I got mad at you. I'm sorry I hit you. But you see why it happened. And maybe if you're listening to this, you say, well, yeah, I guess I can understand that. Once you get through the convincing apology, it starts over. Now we go back to being nice. The flowers show up. Nice day. So the steps again are fairytale romance, isolation, threats of violence, actual violence, and repeat. And I will tell you, I've heard that template a few years ago. And now when I talk with people, when they're telling me their story, I'm thinking of the template. And if they only get to part 3, I'll say, here's what's coming next. In some cases, if I said, here's what's coming next, which is like actual violence, let's say, then they say, well, yeah, there has been some of that too. So that template holds up. And so that's part of what I tell people. But there are all kinds of warning signs, and our foundation has printed thousands of these. They're wallet-sized, and inside of them, you can actually read. And Cece, if you want, I can send this a PDF of this to you. And
sure, that would be great.
If you want, or something like that.
Yeah.
But when you go through some of those, it might be constant put-downs. Controlling behavior is really the key to all of this. It's one person trying to control another person or a group of people, but it's like over the top checking up on you. If I love you and I care about you, of course I want to know where you are. But I don't have to keep texting you every 5 minutes saying, where are you now? And I don't have to say to you, well, I don't know. If you're at Macy's, why don't you take a picture of the Macy's sign and text it back to me? That's over the top. If you're constantly getting pecked away at, that's too much. And that's a warning sign. So the bottom line is, if you feel odd about what's taking place, which is supposed to be a good thing, if you feel odd, trust your feelings. Or if it looks odd that your friend is going through something, trust your feelings and do something.
Right, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that with us. One thing came to mind as you were talking about that is also the financial abuse. Where someone will take the control of the funds to keep you pretty much in a lockdown situation. So you feel like you can't, be able to move forward, do something different.
Right.
And so that is, I think, also part of that it definitely, takes a place. And I've seen it within relationships, especially long-term relationships. And that very much happens. So now, as we're traveling through and we're starting to see some of these signs, what would you suggest would be a way for us to be able to step out and maybe get some help that we need? Any suggestion on that?
Well, yes, I can, of course. I can tell you from the side of the person it's happening to, and I can also say that for that person's friends or loved ones who see it happening and don't have a sense of what to do. If you were the person who is being abused, and I'm going to call it that, because these things, abuse sounds like such a tough word, and so does violence. But honestly, I've talked with enough professionals in the field, and they come right out and call it abuse, and they call it violence. I mean, violence doesn't have to be hitting somebody, nor does abuse. So, but if you're in that situation where someone is trying to take control of you in different ways like that, and now you're waking up to the fact, I tell people you have to seek counseling. You know, I mean, in some cases, yes, you know, you might get some great advice from your friends or from your family and steer clear and things like that. But I suggest that someone gets in touch if they're really that concerned about it, and they should get in touch with counseling. Now, one of the things that's very simple to do is call an 800 number, and I'll tell it to you, and it's easy to remember. And it's 1-800-799-SAFE. So the hardest part to remember is the 799. It's an 800 number, and the last word SAFE, 800-799-SAFE. And these people are trained counselors. They're great. They are not going to call you back at the worst time. You're not going to be sitting next to this person who's abusive to you or you're afraid of now. They're not going to call you back unless you want to be called back. They're not going to call the police and have a SWAT team hit your house or something like that. They're going to give you great advice. They're going to ask you good questions. They know what they're doing. But I would say seek help, or at least go online and start to Google these types of things. There are plenty of agencies out there. There's plenty of good advice so that you're absolutely sure, yeah, this really is happening. And also to get a sense of what to do, and also to get a sense of how to break up with somebody, which was the key mistake my daughter made, because she did it in the way that most people would say, well, that was an honorable thing to do because she did it in her apartment, and they were just the two of them, and it seemed like the right thing until he lost it and killed her. So we don't want that happening to anybody. So there's good advice about how to break up. I will tell you quickly, the best advice I ever received was from the woman who prosecuted our case. And that was to do it by phone, not necessarily your own phone. Call that person up if you can on a Friday night and get out of town for a week or two. Now, that's an extreme version. You don't want to do it in person. If you do it in person, you want to do it in a public place with friends and you know, good, strong people around you, depending on who you're breaking up with. And you want to do it very quickly, and you want to get out of there, and there's no, can I see you one last time? There are plenty of people who've been injured or killed seeing that person one last time. Can I see you? You know, we dated for 2 years. Can I see you one more time? I met a woman who lost the eyesight in her right eye, and she's lucky to be alive because they sat in his car and they talked, and he pulled out a gun and shot her in the face. She's lucky to be alive, but she is blind in one eye. The other side of it, though, are friends or family members who are concerned. If you were that person, again, you have to seek counseling. You have to seek great advice. And once you have some of that, then your job is to try to talk with the person it's happening to. But even that you should get counseling about, because there are 100 ways to do it the wrong way. And honestly, unfortunately, most of the things you think you should do, you probably shouldn't. For instance, you think you might want to pounce on that person and say things like, how could you let this happen to you? Couldn't you see this? You go through all this. What you accidentally wind up doing is you become another person who feels to the person being abused like they're being abused now by you, which is pretty ironic. So you don't want to be judging and jumping all over that person. You want to be able to say, look, there are avenues you can take. You've got to feel right about this. I want you to be safe. You know I care about you. The main thing you want to do is get that person to talk about it, because in doing that, that person will convince his or herself, oftentimes it's the woman, she'll convince herself how bad it really is and that she needs to get out of that. But all of that has to be done carefully, and it has to be planned. You know, because I mean, it's if you don't do it well, it could be, it could be a Kristin Mitchell situation.
Right, absolutely. I know there was a friend of my daughter's when she was younger. The gentleman shot her at their apartment, and it was very life-changing for my daughter. Just having to experience a friend that had that happen to. And so this is real. This is very, very real. And, I wanted to kind of go back over the steps. And I think the number one thing is a better understanding of what is happening to you. Because so often I think when we're going through abuse, we don't realize what it is. And we keep thinking, oh, well, maybe I did this, or maybe I said something, or maybe it's my behavior. And that's what they want. They want to put that off on you to make you accept, their bad behavior. And so it makes it really difficult, doesn't it?
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is one of the most insidious parts of this whole discussion. The people, it's interesting. I read something a couple years ago, and it gets to this one place, and that is the people who do this to other people don't do it accidentally. It is totally intentional. I mean, they know that they're doing this to you. They do, and I don't want to believe it, but now I really do believe it. They intend to control you. They don't necessarily intend to hurt you. They just want to control you. If it's going to take making you miserable to control you, they'll go there. If they can get there the nice way, they're going to control you. So that's what happens. And it's just kind of a success or failure situation. They keep trying things. But for the most part, I have found, at least, this is going to be a sweeping generality, that a lot of people who are abused are really great people. They're great, loving, innocent people who are trustworthy. And if something happens that's really bad to them, they kind of want things to come back together, and they kind of want to forgive, and they want to move on. And so for the person who's the perpetrator, well, that's just perfect, because even if I slap you and hit you, chances are everything's going to be fine, and you're going to make me a nice meal in a couple of days. But one of the things that you said was so great and so amazing and awful at the same time is the fact that the people who are abusers find insidious ways to make you feel like you're the one making the mistakes, that you're the one that's goofing it up, that you're pressuring me, and that's why I act the way I act. It's all justification. So that's part of it too. And I mean, I know, we all have our stories of people we know, but my cousin's daughter went through, she's in the midst of a divorce as we speak, but she got to the point where her husband, through his actions and just things he pulled, things he said, had her convinced she was crazy. And I mean, like, certifiable. And they have 3 little boys in the house, but she was pretty sure she was really losing her mind. And fortunately, she shook it off and realized, oh my God, now I start to see what he's done to me. But I mean, I've heard stories of, somebody will put out the vitamins the night before and kind of set everything up for breakfast tomorrow. And then the husband will slip down the stairs and put some of it away and kind of move things around a little bit, sneak back in bed. And she didn't know he did this. And she comes down the next day and says, I thought I put all the vitamins out. Well, I guess you didn't. This type of thing is like, well, because I don't know, Cece, if you've heard of a term called gaslighting. Have you?
Yes, I have. I was going to mention that. Yes,
Yeah.
I have. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yes. So, that was taken from an old film, but it had to do with the fact that somebody was, without going through the film, of course, that somebody was doing things and making the other person feel like they were losing it. And so these are the kinds of nasty tricks or pieces of behavior that people will use to get control over people. And you mentioned just earlier about the financial control. Some people call it economic control, but for instance, again, now here's something that's really bad, but when it's happening, it's sent up like it's good. So let's say we get married and I want to control this person somehow, and we're going along and I have a job, she has a job, and she's complaining about her job, and it's like, look, I make enough money. You don't really need to work. Why don't you quit that job? So he keeps telling her this, and he's trying to make more out of how bad her job is. And maybe one day she says, you know what, you're right. I just want to quit. I don't want to do that. It's like, fine, that's great. Well, about a month later, I'm saying things like, well, look, you can't be spending all this money. I mean, only one of us is working now. So you can see that he helped get the job away. After that's going to come things like she goes to go shopping or something like that. She goes for credit cards are all missing. And she comes home and says, you won't believe it, all my cards are gone. It's like, yeah, I know your cards are gone. I took them. Because you're spending money like a crazy person. So you can see little by little, that person's being in slow motion and invisibly caged in her own house. Maybe her car is missing one day, or her keys, or who knows. So it's, yeah, I'm going to keep plucking away. I'm going to take every branch by the time we're finished, and all that's left is you. You really won't have too many friends. Your family will be so mad at me because I'm going to act like a jerk that they don't want us around very much. So that's good for me. I want you all to myself. I want to be in total control. You can't spend money. You can't do this and that. I've talked with people who seriously were like confined to quarters in their own homes. And you can't believe it. I mean, I'm talking people who were, this woman was a professional nurse, smart person. I know somebody who was a Harvard grad, smart person. And these things happen to these people. So it's bizarre, but.
Right. And something, I did want to share is that it happens to all walks of life. So it doesn't matter how much money you make or what home you live in or, what environment. It happens to so many people. So many people.
Yeah, and you're right. That's a classic myth. That's a classic myth that you can, in your mind, you might have a picture of what the neighborhood is. You might have a picture of what the people look like. And it's not to say it doesn't happen there, because it does. But honestly, it happens everywhere. We live in a nice county in Maryland, and there are some very nice houses. Ours is fine, but there are some houses that are many times larger than ours. And one day, a woman who was married to a man who lived in, I'll come out and say, the largest house that was in there with the big swimming pool and everything like that, showed up one day and was sharing parts of her life to my wife. And it was appalling. And when I got home that evening, my wife told me about it and said, she's showing me these pictures, bruises and things that he's done over the course of the last 30 years. And so, yes, it's everywhere. Nobody, I hate to say things like this, it seems so terrifying, but nobody's really safe from domestic violence.
Absolutely. I tell you what, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, let's talk about the change that we can make and how we can help people to be able to move through and what we can do to connect with you. So let's talk about that when we come back, Bill. So Great. This is Cece with Going Solo. You are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, and it is great to have you. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back to Going Solo with Cece. This is WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. Today we have with us Bill Mitchell. Bill Mitchell is a domestic and dating violence speaker. He suffered a tremendous tragedy when his daughter, Kristin Mitchell, was killed in 2005. And since that time, he's really developed a foundation to help other people become more aware of domestic violence, aware of dating violence, and just how they can really kind of seek help, change their lives, and be able to move forward. So the first part of the show, we talked a little bit about your journey, Bill, and welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really, very powerful to be here.
Well, we talked, thank you so much. I tell you what, we talked a lot about the first part. So if anyone missed the first part of the show, please, listen to it again. But we talked about various things, and you talked about the steps, the fairytale romance, the isolation, the threats of violence, the actual violence, then going through the apology, and then doing that yo-yo all over again and being able to function that. We talked about how important it is to become aware of what's happening around you, that you're not, what you're feeling and what you're experiencing, that you're not crazy. And so often we find out the gaslighting and things like that's happening with you, that you think you're actually going crazy and you're the one that is in the problem. And so in order to get help, we talked about that. We talked about maybe some of the better ways of breaking up. And also we listed the number, if you need to get help right away, the number is 800-799-SAFE, SAVE, SAFE. And so if you can remember that. So let's talk a little bit more this time about what can we do to help other people. I know you have a terrific website, and it's called WhenDatingHurts.com.
Yes.
And I thought that was a great website, because it allows people to be able to go in and start doing some research. So if you feel that you're in some sort of situation that's not good, come to your website and have a look at it. So tell us a little bit about that, the organization that you've developed, so we can get help out there for people.
Yes, one place they can look is WhenDatingHurts.com. Another place, which might even be better in some ways, is our actual foundation website, which is Kristin. It's Kristin's Crusade. Now, I'll have to spell that for you because it'd be very easy not to get that right. But it's from Kristin Mitchell. Kristin actually is spelled with 2 I's. Most people want to spell it Kristen. It's really Tin. Crusade is actually spelled with a K, so it's an alliteration of KK. So it's kristinscrusade.org. And that's also a good place to go, because we have a lot of links there that you can go to some national information that is that's really worth it. And part of it is, for anybody listening in, you might think, well, thank goodness this isn't happening around me. I've never had this in my family. It doesn't go on in neighborhoods like mine. I mean, I've heard all these things. The truth of the matter is, it does happen to people like you, and it does happen to people like your neighbors and your friends, and it does happen in your zip code. It just does. I've talked with enough people. I've gotten around. I've gone through domestic violence training and things like that, and it's not meant to be the big scare. It's just true. I mean, I don't like to run around and give a lot of statistics, because people just kind of gloss over. But one that you can take to the bank, I've heard it 25%, and lately now I hear it more like 33%, but let's just say 25 to 33% of women will suffer physical relationship violence, okay? Now that's a lot. When you think 1 in 3, that's a high number. If I thought I could win the lottery and my chances are 1 in 3, believe me, I'd be buying a lot of tickets, because that's a very high chance of it happening. Okay, so it'll happen, and it typically happens between the ages of 16 and 24. So then, if you're listening in, you think, wow, that could be my daughter, that could be someone next door, that could be my brother's daughter, could be any number of people. That's anybody in college, high school, and really just out of college age, that type of thing. And that's not the cutoff. It can go on. It just most typically happens in that time. So you say, okay, look, there's a great chance of this taking place. So I guarantee you somebody is going through it. I mean, my God, it's 33%. So then the question is, well, then what can I do to help them, or what can I do to help myself? And knowledge is power, and education brings empowerment. So you have to say, you know what, I'm going to have to put a focus on this. If I told you there was a 1 in 3 chance of you getting some horrible disease, you probably would wake up and say, I don't want that to happen. This is kind of like that. I mean, this is that bad. Somebody is being emotionally injured, or somebody's being emotionally and physically injured all the time. It's happening. I don't always understand why it's happening, but there are a lot of people out there who have problems, and they take it out on other people. They transfer it over. So yes, take a look at our websites, or just start Googling dating violence or intimate partner violence or domestic violence, but look it up, because you're going to wish that you knew more about it sometime. And as we talked about, Cece and I, a little while ago, that if you get to thinking about warning signs and controlling behavior, you say, wow, I felt like I was experiencing over-the-top controlling behavior at work, because there's definitely abuse at work. Not necessarily somebody's hitting somebody, of course, but there is that type of thing. And once your antenna's up, and believe me, mine's way up based upon what happened to my daughter. Once your antenna's up and you're thinking about these types of things, you're going to listen to things differently, or you're going to ask the next question of somebody that maybe in the past you would have said, oh, okay. And you might think, well, the guy's kind of possessive, but, I don't know. There are people like that, and you just kind of go on. I don't let any of that stuff slide anymore. If I hear somebody at work, or if I hear somebody talking about their daughter, about the boyfriend, saying, yeah, he's pretty difficult, and, he wants her to himself all the time. Before this happened to my daughter, I wouldn't have given it a second thought. Now I want to know more. And that's key. You have to get to the point where your antenna's up and you're thinking, I want to catch this before it hurts somebody I care about. In some cases, I want to catch it before it happens to myself. So.
Right. Absolutely. Well, great information. I tell you what, I know that it's definitely going to help people change lives, and for them to be able to get the professional help that they need, and they should definitely do that. I just want to add that although we are talking probably a great deal about women, this does happen to men. I have had men in my divorce support group that have shared stories with me that, the table was turned on them. And although they were the breadwinner or whatever, there was a lot of controlling factors that happened within their relationship that, it was very, very difficult for them. Then we have to also think about, let's say, you move forward into the relationship. You do have a long-term relationship. You do have children. You have all of that. And you have this domestic violence within your family. How is that going to come into your children's lives? So this is a whole huge, huge issue. And it's just absolutely life-changing for everybody involved. So what we'd like to do today is really make you aware of it. If you are dating, you're coming across something that's uncomfortable, step back and take a real good look at it. Google, find out some information. Contact Bill Mitchell, and his website again is Kristin Crusade, which is KRISTINSKRUSADE.org. Or you could go to whendatinghurts.com. And do you have a link from, and I should have looked at this, but I think you have a link, don't you, from whendatinghurts.com to your organization?
Yes, yes. Yeah, there are a lot of ways to get in touch with us. Absolutely.
Right. So if you can't remember it, just remember When Dating Hurts, and you can look into that website, and it'll take you to the other website. But if you think or you know of someone, or you hear of someone that is going through a difficult time, definitely stand up. Be a person, be a friend, and say, listen, why don't you talk or look at this or read this and become more aware of what's happening to you. I think that if you do that in a loving way, they'll start reading stuff and they'll start seeing, oh my gosh, my life is like this, and they'll contact someone like you.
Good. Great. Very wise. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. We appreciate all that you've given us.
Yes, this is a wonderful avenue to get this information out to people, and it will improve people's lives. And that's what we're all about, right? We want to improve and save lives. That's our thing.
Absolutely. Well, this is Cece with Going Solo. You are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We did have Bill Mitchell with us, and please definitely contact his website. It's whendatinghurts.com. So we'll talk to you later. Bye for now.